gentlemen, plants of all kind. It is such a treat to be here today. We have with us Crystal and Mark. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
We are doing great, Amrit. Thank you for having us today.
It is such a pleasure to have not just one, but two guests, two for the price of one. The Indian in me that loves a good deal is thrilled. For those that are tuning in for the first time, check it out. They've just written a book on how to ask. It's called Ask, ! That's the one. And it's about bridging your dreams to your destiny. There is so much to be said about all the books that have been written before and all the work that these guys have done before, but I really just want to go straight into it. What inspired you to write a book on how to ask?
Well, here's what happens. You don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you ask for. And what we did is we started looking at our own lives and said, how did we get out of the muck? How did we get out of the quagmire? How did we get out of every adversity? And it always came back to asking. But we said, well, what is the model that works for everybody pretty much? And we said, you got to ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And then we wrote everything we could think about. We did the full university thing with Harvard and Stanford and Cambridge. And then we interviewed 26 superstar askers, because as we travel around the world, what we discovered is great people, wonderful people, nice people in 80 countries we've been to, 7 million people. But the people between little success and people with vast success is one thing only: their destiny. And what we talked about off camera before we came on the show was that a lot of people get stuck in their stuff, and they're trained like you as an engineer, or trained as a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, a garbage man. It doesn't matter what they're trained as, but they've missed their real calling, their real destiny. And we think we found the clue to people asking at depth. We're telling everyone, get 2 copies of Ask the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny, and go question by question in the book. And what it does, it unravels who you thought you were to find out who you really are.
So somehow there's this implication that we all have a destiny.
Well, I think so. I mean, Mark and I believe we have a destiny that continues to unfold. And when we're on track, we're actually moving toward our ultimate destiny. I think we all have an ultimate destiny. And that includes a lot of phases in our lives. But I think when we're on track and we're asking the right questions and moving forward in the right direction, we're always ever moving closer to our destiny. And we found that to be the case in our own lives. Like Mark said, we determined there are actually 3 channels through which to ask. Those are ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And that each of those channels is equally important. Starting with the ask yourself part, because that's really the reflective journey. And when people get stuck and they don't seem to have any answers and they don't know which way to go and everything seems hopeless, they always have questions. That's what we tell people. You always have questions. So when it seems like you've lost everything else and you don't have a single answer in the world, you have questions. So follow the questions and listen for the answers. And question by question, answer by answer, illumination by illumination, you will start to see a direction. Your life will start to go again in a certain direction, and follow that. And as you do that, you literally start to unleash some of the dreams in your heart, because you're really getting closer to what you're supposed to be doing. Sort of what you did. I'll bet you asked a lot of questions when you switched careers, Amrit.
Yeah. It felt like I asked one question too many sometimes. Yeah. And when I'm hearing you talking about asking yourself, what I'm hearing in there for me, that sounds closely related to actually tapping or a direct entry point into my intuition.
Well, by the way, okay, so 3 things that you just said all at once. And number 1 is we think God only gave human beings 3 abilities. Number 1, the ability to ask. Nobody in the animal kingdom except us, humans, have it. Number 2 is we have intuition, which I'm going to define as a wellsprings of wisdom that's deep within, that can't come out without number 1. And then number 3, once you got intuition, then you got imagination, which again doesn't exist anywhere in the animal kingdom except theoretically we are the top of the hierarchy, so to speak, and we're the most evolved, and we've really evolved most. You've been around humans as 2 million years, but the last 40,000 years, and then the last 500 years, once the printing press came out, we really accelerated. It's called accelerating acceleration, as you know, Cole, exponential growth. And that's where we are right now. And we're at the peak of that from a technological point of view. Whether we're there on a spiritual level, which is what you're doing, is a whole different question. We think the spiritual level is more important. And I think that you would agree.
Yeah, totally. Actually, when we're talking about accelerating acceleration, that's actually one of the deepest, I guess, prayers that I carry, is praying. And I love the way that you put it. Like, intuition is that wellspring of wisdom that's inside. Is the prayer is that our wisdom, may it forever outstrip our knowledge, because it seems like we're harnessing a lot of knowledge.
A lot of wisdom, I think, not knowledge, but not a lot of wisdom. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the prayer is for the wisdom to be there, in terms of, like, I don't know the answers to some of these things, like gene splicing, and like cloning and stuff. And it's like, where do we go with stuff like that? And it's like, again, I can ask, but I don't know, and I just feel like, okay, so may the wisdom, kind of guide us, further than the knowledge can carry. Yeah.
Very good point.
What you're saying is there's another law in universe. Only God is unitary. Everything else has polarity, black and white and morning and night and all that. But what you just said is the same thing here. Knowledge is a two-edged sword, right? It can be positive or negative, just like fire can either warm the house, like right now it happens to be cold in Scottsdale, Arizona, where we live, but it can also burn a dang place down if you don't have the wisdom not to leave matches around for little kids.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. That's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor. So I will circle back to the conversation of destiny at some point, but we're talking about asking yourself and your intuition. I imagine there would be is there a point where you really connected to your intuition, either Crystal or Mark? I had to or both. Was there a point where you realized, the answer from within?
Yes, definitely. I really started down a more spiritual journey when I was in my early 20s. And I feel very fortunate because I was raised in a certain religion, and I couldn't really accept some of the, rules of that religion, or just some of the ideas around the religion. It just didn't
paradigms,
resonate. Yeah, paradigms. And I just, I felt very deeply connected to, God, to something greater than me, but I never felt like the rules fit with that universal presence of God. I felt like God was something very different than the way the people in that church were behaving. So, I was guided from a very young age. When I started questioning things, I started having some amazing dreams that guided me, and a lot of things were revealed to me, and my intuition started growing, and I would start to actually dream about things that I was seeking. I would see those things surface in my dreams, and my questions would be answered. And so I'm really grateful for that. It was, part of that. In the book, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, Amrit, but the first part of the book is the fable of Michaela. And it's a fable that I wrote. And I integrated these dreams into Michaela's experience. She's obviously a fictional character, but it takes place in the time of kings and queens. And Michaela is at this point in her life where she's lost everything. She's lost her mother and her father. Both died one after the other. And then the bill collectors took her home. So she's living in a grove of trees, and she's lost all hope. And her job every day is she's an indentured servant at a stone quarry. And so her job every day is to move rocks from one place to another place. And I feel like, I wrote this because I wrote it to be every woman and every man's journey in a way, because I feel like right now a lot of people feel like that's what life feels like. It's like we're kind of moving rocks every day from one place to another, and it's very heavy. And a lot of people have lost hope, especially with this pandemic and everything people have been through. And so Michaela falls into this exhausted sleep one night, and the being appears, and the being takes her on a journey. And he shows her this sparkling ask bridge, and he admonishes her to start asking and never stop. And so she wakes up, and she's completely changed already inside, yet her journey's just beginning because it's just awakened something in her. And so she keeps thinking about the words the being told her. And so throughout her day, everything starts to look differently to her. She's all of a sudden wondering about everything. She's curious again about everything and everyone around her. She's wondering, what am I supposed to ask? She's starting to look more deeply into each person around her and wonder about them. What is their story? What is their journey? And so layer by layer, her life begins to expand in these circles. And by the end of the fable, Michaela has completely transformed into an entirely different person. And so I think for me, although Michaela's journey is completely different than mine, it's not that story is not my story. I think that's what happens when you open up and start asking questions, questioning everything, and start to live in the wonder of the universe. We come into this world as children and we're completely uncorrupted in our ability to ask for everything. There's nothing to shut us down, right? We ask who, what, when, where, why, how, we want to know everything. We're wildly curious, and we want to ask for more. We want more. We're not unashamed that we want more, and we want everything. Why not? Right. And that's like our little spirit trying to grow and evolve and learn in this world. And then over time, sort of that beautiful curiosity gets crushed out of us, depending on how we were parented, how, we were treated in school, our business and career experience. Just basic life rejection starts to shut us down. And suddenly we're standing there as adults feeling like we're embarrassed or afraid to ask anyone for anything, first of all, right? We have this sense of unworthiness or fear. And in addition to that, we're actually ashamed that we don't already have all the answers. And I think that's the saddest part of all, because if we stay open to our intuition and realize that there's so much that we don't know always, I think that is wisdom, and stay in the wonder of a child. That is the wisest way we can be, because what we're doing, we're acknowledging that there's so much we don't know, and there's always so much more to learn. And so.
Thank you so much for that. I don't know how to say this without sounding aggrandizing, but that's okay. To feel into the intention behind asking, and to see the seed that it's planting as the intention of, just inviting people back into that intention of curiosity, which I think is just one of the fundamental tenets of the nature. Like, one of my favorite perspectives is that we are the universe looking in on ourselves. And in that, it's like almost impregnated in the fabric of everything is just us looking in on ourselves. So it's like, oh, we must be pretty curious. The universe must be a pretty curious sort of creation in order to go on this journey to do that, and to see how, the intention of the book is to invite people back into that awe, that curiosity, learning to ask is profound. How do we ask is the question that's coming for, like, ask ourselves questions. I know others is another step, but when we're talking about ourselves, how do we form that bridge and that relationship with ourselves to start to ask? Is it a matter of just simply asking for the things we want?
It'd be nice if it were that simple. Then everybody would pull off the magic they want and get to their destiny. I'm enjoying this so much because you're so meditative. You're so guru-like. Guru means a self-realized being, and a guru just means somebody who is. And I assume with that name that you come out of Indian descent. I don't know for sure. Is that true?
Very much so. Very much.
I lived in India for a long time, so I got it. Oh my gosh! Anyhow,
here we go. Yes or no? I don't know. I don't know. But the head is wobbling, so keep going.
I spent some time with Lati, self-realized being. So. And my goal was to gain enlightenment. So the point, what you said is profound at a couple levels, and then Nan's going to answer your question, I promise, or I'll try. Is what you said is different than I've ever heard before. Asking is the root, right? The plant gets planted, the seed, you said. And what it does is the answer is the fruit. And there is a gestation period, and that's where most people get lost because they go, I asked for it once, I should have it now, right? Just like a little kid. I don't know if you have any children. We got in our blended family 5 kids. 6
there's a child in me that does that.
By the way, that's because you're not polluted. You haven't been crushed. In engineering, is supposed to crush you. Did you not catch make boxes that get stacked, pal? So what we're saying is, this is so much fun. There's 3 parts to it. You ask, right? But to ask first, you got to know, where am I? That's sort of like the GPS. If I call Uber, they're going to say, well, where are you? So I don't know. You just find me. You never can't do that. You got to know where you are, and you got to ask all the questions to go there. Then, where do I want to go? And this is what, back to your thing about want. Most people are not clear about what they want. And you ask most people, and they stutter and they get scared. And I've been doing seminars around the world for 44 years. And I can promise you that's the withhold that most people have. And then, where would you like to go to the nth degree? And that's sort of visualizing is realizing. And I did a whole tape and book on it. But, what would you like to see yourself? And in our case, what we want to do is see everybody take this asking journey, get a copy of the book, Ask the Bridge from Your Dreams to Destiny, probably at Amazon, because that's everywhere in the world right now, and every bookstore is not open, although I'd rather have you go to a bookstore, read it, but get 2 copies and go over it with somebody, question by question, and sculpt yourself, because our corporate symbol is a butterfly, as I think you probably know in luck. So everyone starts metaphorically as a caterpillar. Now, look, 8 billion of us have been in this cocoon, this chrysalis, for almost a year, which is nuts, right? And what happens is, with the right questions, you're back to your metaphor, which I really like, is the seed is the root, and now let's go get some fruit. And you say, well, come on, Mark, be straight. How does that work? Well, I know American history better than Aussie history. And when America went bankrupt the first time in 1898, what came out of it? 4 things after it was shut down. The automobile, Henry Ford, the telephone, from Alexander Graham Bell, electricity, the light bulb from Edison, and 2 brothers at a bicycle thing, decided they could fly after they'd broken every bone in their body. They're laying in the hospital looking at each other. And he says, maybe that dumbass German's not so smart. He may have screwed up on because you're an engineer, the coefficient of lift and drag, and it was only off 1%. And calculated it because they're sitting in the hospital for 6 months. Most people don't know that part of the story, and I just think it's so good because we're talking about the gestation from the question to the answer, and they got the answer, and obviously they went through a lot of pain to get there.
And is that an invitation to asking the question, but then also having the patience for the response to arrive in your life, is what I'm hearing.
Right. I think that's absolutely true. I think you have to be patient. We call it the asking journey. Life continues to unfold. And even when you'll get so many answers and you'll be in a good place and a good track, and then something else will come along in life that's going to challenge you. And you're going to need to sit down with yourself and ask again. It's a journey that never stops, but it's one that we need to keep taking so that we can keep moving forward and not getting stuck. And like Mark said, there are like 3 critical phases. We think of that asking yourself part, that reflective journey, so that you can understand where you are now, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change, what just getting gut honest, sort of holding up the mirror about your life and really looking at it. And then where do you want to be? Because that's so important. And how many people do you know, Amrit? We see it all the time where people are so unhappy, but they have no idea what would make them happy because they've never taken any time to ask themselves. They've never taken this reflective journey. They've never sat down in the quiet, the phone's going off, the dings, the notifications, boom, boom, what's happening on social media. We're so distracted by absolute rubbish all the time, right? It's meaningless.
It's a bombardment. It's a
bombardment. Really meaningless rubbish. And then we wonder why we feel discombobulated, ungrounded, unfocused, why we can't get somewhere. We're not taking that time in that personal journey with ourselves to ask those questions, to patiently listen for the answers. And it takes patience, but it also takes awareness, quiet, a little bit of intuition. If you've got noise happening all the time, how are you ever going to hear the answers? Because I know for me personally and for Mark, some of the answers we get, many of the answers come in those quiet spaces, in that still small voice from inside of you where you're connecting with the divine. You know, how do you think God talks to you, right? It can be a big, hammer over the head if he's really trying to get your attention, right? But, really, the conversations with God, with the divine, are so subtle, but yet so powerful. You know when they're happening, but it's because you've given this space and this presence. You have to have presence when you ask these questions. And we say, when you get to that part where you're saying, what do I really want? Where do I want to be in my life? Now that I realize where I am and I'm not really happy with it, where do I want to be? Start from that place of beautiful imagination. I mean, like Mark said, we're the only animal that has imagination. We created in the Creator's image. Scripture even talks about that, right? We're the only being that can literally create something out of thin air in our imagination through inspiration, through observing things, through getting ideas and critical thinking. And we create that in our imagination, and then we can bring it to life in the real world. And in fact, every single thing that has ever been brought to life in this world came from someone's imagination.
The whole world around us. Yeah, totally.
Right? So for everyone who's listening, you have that same imagination. Yours is just the same. It's amazing, right? Let's sit down and use it. Take the asking journey with us. Sit down, that second phase, like, what do I want? Where do I want to be? And what does that look like? And I'm going to imagine it, not from the lowest state of my being, not from barely getting by and, but from my nth degree of happiness, satisfaction, fulfillment, the nth degree of that I can imagine into being. I'm going to start there. And then I'm going to ask the questions backwards. In this nth degree of my most amazing career, what am I doing every day? Who am I talking to? How are they responding? What services am I promoting or talking about or sharing? What products am I promoting? How is that changing lives? And how does that make me feel? And in that way, right, asking those questions, you engineer it, talking to the engineer, backwards, right? You create your perfect architecture from your greatest imagination in life.
I love that. Yep. So to sort of visualize what basically would be your version of utopia and to sort of ask the questions backwards from that. So how does that feel? How does that look? Who am I sitting with? Who am I talking to? Who have I met on the journey? It's very timely that we're having this conversation. On just the weekend gone, I was at a dear friend's home, and he's actually been on the podcast. His name's John McDonough, and he's here in Australia. And he's a beautiful friend to have because he's quite a bit senior to myself. And he said, everything in life that I've sort of asked for has come my way. But one of my biggest challenges, and this is what he was reflecting to me, was I could never just really put my finger on what it is that I wanted. That was the battle, like figuring out what I wanted. And I remember the way he said it, and just looking at his face, and I was just like, when you put it that way, it's not that easy when you stop to think and go, what do I really want? First of all, like you said, many of us do not ask the question. But those of us that then do, it's like, wow, like that can be quite an intimidating question. It's like, what do I want? And figuring out what you want. And then, as we said, like, as you were sharing so eloquently, like there's the bombardment of what society tells us we need or want, and all those sort of layers that get packed in, trying to discern that from what it is that I really want, from kind of my own what's emerging from within, potentially the soul. Or I think that's really, really, really timely, just to sort of reflect on what he was sharing and what you guys are sharing as well in this space in terms of how to find out exactly what you want.
The point is, you can't be happy unless you're progressing in the 2 C's we say, because we're created in the image and likeness. You're here to create and you're here to contribute. But everyone's got a unique way to create and contribute. Now, I went bankrupt in 1974, started learning about writing the books. And then, now I've sold 500 million books and everyone says, well, you should be the happiest camper. Well, my cliche is a happier man nowhere exists. I think I'll keep doing it and persist. The point is,
I love that.
I write cliches. Anyhow, I love them. And I know they're
so good
in my brain. And so, but we're halfway to goal. I want to do 1 billion books. And if you look at my critics, they all go, this guy doesn't know it. There's only one, the Bible sold 1 billion, but no human has. Well, nobody has, but you're the 122nd podcast we're doing, and we're very thankful. We just started in April last year, and we sold a lot of books as a result, and thankful. But I'm on the Amazon bestseller podcast, and the guy starts out saying, well, you're the Roger Bannister of books. And I thought, well,
I love that.
Do you remember who Roger Bannister was?
Yeah, the 4-minute mile.
Yeah, but the week after he did it, before that, your heart would jump out of your chest. Everybody knew nobody could run that fast. And so now what do you got? We did 119 people did that. Now our family, we all meet in Boulder, Colorado, and we do the Boulder, but they let they let the people from Kenya, who have the longest legs you've ever seen in life. I mean, they're all legs and no torso. These people, they take off first. They are back to 120,000 of us run. It's a charity fundraiser, and we bring our family. When we're starting, they're finished. They look like, I'm glad you see the humor in this. They're like gazelles moving across the line. Holy cow. Because 120,000 people all giving money for this thing and getting a T-shirt for a lot of money. So it's, I got the T-shirt, we did the run.
That's
but
right.
The point is,
You wave at the camera.
we are literally happy. Then just one other thing, after I got a painful divorce, I wrote down 267 things. What do I want in my ideal other person? I thought I wanted a soulmate, and I ultimately got my twin flame because I said, we got to have the same values. We both got to be deeply, profoundly into spiritual growth. Because what do you do when you're 16 or 17? At least I think in Australia and India. Well, in India, they arrange your marriage. So, right?
Yeah.
Freedom of making a mistake and get divorced if you don't screw it up. Because what do? Most people say, I just want me a hot babe. Or a girl says, I want him tall, dark, and handsome like the men we're looking at. Right? Superficial, not demeaning anybody.
Yeah, the values conversation is, not there.
That's why divorce is running rampant. Whereas I never told her until after we got married, she was 267 out of 267's qualities, values, attributes, characteristics.
Awesome.
Right?
That's so epic.
Right.
I was just going to say,
I had to tell you.
like he didn't tell you.
Were you born in India?
No, I was born in Australia. Yeah.
Okay, so in India, the third thing they when they're arranging a marriage is how does she smell? So one of my goals was she had to naturally smell good, and she does.
Take 267 things is a lot of things. So that's a lot of clarity. I think that's really powerful what you're sharing there, Mark. It's a real invitation to detail.
Clarity is power, and more clarity is more power. And what you just said about your friend John is it's hard to get clear, and that's why Crystal says, look, we spend the first hour every day prayer and meditation together, going through the questions, going through the thinking, making sure we're sculpting out what doesn't work in our life. Sort of like if you've been to Florence, Italy, you see the world's greatest sculpture of David, and they say to Michelangelo, how you make it David? They say, I chip you out everything that wasn't David. Well, that's what the dimensionality of finding your destiny is, chipping out the stuff that isn't the true spirit of who you are.
I love that. That is so profound for me where I am right now, learning to say no to so many things. As there's some point on your journey where we learn to say yes to allow really what is we're trying to call in to come in, and learning to ask for more and more yes. But even at some point, our journey evolves into learning to shed some of the things that are not distinctly aligned to exactly what we're trying to call in as well. So there's an interesting thing you touched on, Mark, and some part of me just wants to jump on it like a tiger. So the piece is, you mentioned that you spend morning time in prayer, and Ernest Holmes wrote a book called The Science of Mind, which is almost like a Bible to me. And one of the things he talks about,
Emmett Fox.
Love Ernest Holmes.
Yeah, and he talks, and the thing that I took away was like, I never paused to reflect on this until after reading that book, was when we pray, we never really pray for like, oh, I hope someone graffitis on the wall outside. Like, our prayers are not mundane. Our prayers are always just like, I'm praying for the health and benefits of, my family, or, my loved ones, or, prosperity, or, whatever it is that you're praying for. You're praying with the sincerest of intentions and the purest of hearts and the clearest of mind, like actually the clearest of mind. And there's something about the efficacy of prayer in clearing and aligning your intentions in your mind, which, yeah, I just feel like you just mentioned it in passing that you utilize prayer, but I think that may be a really profound piece of all of this, right? To learning to ask, because if you don't know where to potentially begin, I feel like what you're praying for is asking as well, right?
I would like her to go into that. I just want to do one thing back to the Ernest Holmes, and then I'll let her answer the prayer. Is it, we've got great friends that I've been in business with and friends with down in Isla Mujeres. It's off Cancun in Mexico, a magnificent place to visit if you haven't. And I spent 2 weeks there, and every day for 4 or 5 hours, the only thing I read was Ernest Holmes. And I highlighted it. I wrote notes. It was profound. It was early. And then in the afternoon, I became a pretty good sailor on a trimaran. Climbed all the mountains and went to Tulum and all the great pyramids.
It's beautiful there, isn't it?
It was amazing. It's one of those things that is so profound. I thought, I got to go take a 2-week vacation where I got 2 friends that would not bug me. They're deep into spirituality. So I'd read it and I'd say, Lindell and Steve, do you mind if I take you through this? And she will tell you unequivocally that we're deep, close friends. And she even writes us saying, well, you're so prayer rich. Why don't you go do X? And I go, wait a second, you're telling me to do it. You're 70, she's older than I am, and he's older. You go do X.
I love your smile and your laugh.
Actually.
Fabulous. I mean, you cannot be in a bad mood.
Touch it. Keep me humble. Keep me humble.
So you brought up such an important point. Like the prayer part and the asking and prayer, and isn't that an important part of it? And it absolutely is. And that's what Mark and I discovered, that when we studied all the people that we looked at who are what we call master askers, who have had great success in life, ourselves included, those 3 channels are equally important. And those are ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And the asking God is such an important part of this asking journey. And I think for people, we tend to be quite narcissistic. All of us do in this life, and quite self-focused. It's just sort of, human nature to be that way, I think, a little bit. But the beautiful thing about asking God is, people say, well, what if I don't believe in God? What connecting with the divine? I mean, you've got to start recognizing yourself as part of this divine creation. So whatever your belief is about God, if you can just connect to that and be willing to expand your thoughts and your beliefs a little bit, because it's like reaching out of yourself. When we're so self-focused, we miss a lot of life. It's kind of like taking a camera lens and you're focused on that pimple, right? When you're looking too close at your life and it's all about you. But when you take the camera lens and bring it out, you realize there's so much more to life. There's so much beauty to life. There are so many people that are part of this beautiful creation that you are also a part of, and nature is a part of, and every living thing is a part of. And so just being able to focus on that magnificence of this universe that God created, and then being able to look at your life from that perspective and start asking the questions, what is my role in this kingdom purpose? What is my purpose in the kingdom? How can I serve in this beautiful universe? How can I serve in this creation? How can I show up every day and be this greatest expression for which you made me, God? I mean, is there any greater question than that? And when we do that, it's sort of like, bringing back the camera lens, and like, you don't see the problems as much. You start to see more of the opportunities. You start to see the scope and the magnificence of everything that's out there and all of the possibilities.
I love that. I'm going to snapshot that and just make that the intro to the whole thing. So, because there's this massive, one of my favorite, there's just so much healing that happens in just expanding your perspective, I find. Oftentimes as as a coach, I'm finding I'm guiding people back into that little, like coming back into just, okay, what, like, instead of just being looking at the tree, what is going on with the forest? And, you know, the thing, you know, kind of the world sees me as now is this purpose coach, and purpose. And that's what you're alluding to. The eloquence with which you just put that out there was amazing. It really resonates with me in terms of when you sort of look back and you can sort of see how things are clicking in and fitting in together. And the question that you asked is, you know, what is my role in and amongst all of these? You know, like, which tree am I? And, you know, what is the role of that particular tree to facilitate? And I think that challenges some people, because it's like, facilitate, what is it? Is it divine will? Is it preordained? You know, is it, you know, what free choice do I have? And I think there's some real big questions that emerge themselves or rear their head when we start getting and looking at that level. But I think it's really beautiful what the ask God, but also ask yourself, because as much as it feels so overwhelming, is like, okay, like, do I even have free will, or do I even ever have choice? What is my destiny? Is there a destiny? If everything's destined, what is my role in it all? But then, you know, ask yourself, and your intuition kind of, it already has all the gooey soft, it kind of knows, right?
Well, let me talk to that just for a second. What we're teaching in the book is, right, one of the biggest questions you can ask is, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, to be passionately on purpose about your destiny. Before you go to sleep, when you close your other eyes, you push back sleep a little bit, and you go in your deeper, innermost, highermost self and say, God, what's your destiny for me? God, what's your destiny for me? God, what's your destiny for me? 400 times, or whatever number you can do before you pass off to sleep. But tell your sweetiekins, hey, I don't know if Mark knows what he's doing, but he's sure sold 500 million books. He says he's going to sell 1 billion. And he told me to have a pen and paper next to bed, because the answer will come. See, most of us, back to your bombardment, which I love that term. I'd never heard anyone put it quite that way before. Crystal says, look, you're over endowed with 18 billion brain cells, right? And you got to go deep to get past all the superficial stuff. And when you ask all those times, the answer comes. And the simple example for chicken soup, Jack and I didn't have the right title. In our respective homes, we gave ourselves a thought command. Say, God, tell us the best-selling title, the mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title, calls me at 2:58 in the morning, wakes up the whole house. This is before cell phones. This is 1989. And he said, chicken soup. I said, for the soul. We both got goosebumps. This is a corroboration of truth. We did not know that we were going to get turned down 144 times, and that our agent was going to, and we had to sell it ourselves. But that's back to your thing about patience, because patience is got to have a subset called persistence, and you've got to be willing to write down what the destination is and what you're supposed to be on purpose. Everybody needs to be on purpose, and you can't be happy, I don't think. You correct me if you see a different view than we do, unless you're passionately on purpose and making some progress towards something that is important to you. So you're contributing. That happiness comes out of contribution and service.
Absolutely. And I love talking to you guys. This is my favorite. Thank you so much. Yeah. So my top, we talked about values before, and it was, mine's a connection, contribution, and celebration. And that contribution piece, I think, we're often looking for happiness, but contribution and progress is Mark, thank you so much for putting it so eloquently. I really appreciate that. So there's this, we've talked about asking for ourselves. We've talked about asking God. And I love that process of, just before you drop away to sleep, like, ask, what is my destiny? What is my calling? And for some people, perhaps destinies, I imagine a bit, maybe it's too ethereal. And then maybe, what is my legacy, if it feels more comfortable to ask? Find your own way to ask, but please do ask. I think the thing that I would like to ask next in this space is asking others. Why is that so hard for so many of us?
Well, it is so hard. And, we write about it in the book. We call it the 7 roadblocks to asking. And what we discovered is that most of us have these roadblocks, Amrit. We're just, and we could go through the roadblocks, but we're very hesitant to ask. And it's interesting because we looked at the studies, and the studies on asking show that people going into the study pretty much universally felt like if they were going to ask somebody for something, information, advice, or help in some way, that they would either be perceived as being stupid, ignorant, uninformed, or would be perceived as being pushy or obnoxious, The opposite is true. The studies found, generally, like if you just are willing to put yourself out there and ask someone for something, help, advice, information, whatever, there's an 80% more likely chance you will get your request granted. So the truth of it is people like to help other people.
It's so true. It's so true. We do.
Right, but we're all scared to death. People are scared to death to ask. And so it's this conditioning that is talking to us all the time. And those are the 7 roadblocks we talk about. And those are, unworthiness, doubt, excuses, which is sort of that long ranger syndrome, which, no, I don't need any help. Well, why don't you ask? No, I can do it myself. Don't need any help. And they'll ever in a day trying to prove they don't need any help, don't need to ask anyone, and be miserable, but, stubborn excuses kind of thing. And then there's just also fear, which is, some people have terror. They're terrified to ask, right? Somebody something. And I think that terror is really about rejection. I think some people are so afraid, as human beings, we need love. We need to experience love. And I think if they feel that someone says no to them, it's a rejection, and it's sort of a withdrawal of love or approval. And again, that's not true. It's just our perception. If someone says no to us, it really has so much more to do with them than it has to do with you. They could be having a terrible day. They might be facing a death or an illness of someone in their family. They might have lost their job or be worried about something, or their child or whatever, or they just can't help, but we need to stop personalizing and taking things so personally, and just say, you know what, bless that person. If they can't help me, I'm going to keep asking. I know I'll find the exact person who will be able to fulfill my request, meet my need, whatever. But you can't stop asking. That's the key. And another one of the roadblocks is naivete. And that's a big one. It's a big one, because we don't ask for things just because we're naive to what really is out there for us. And we tell this story in the book. I had this lovely woman from the Philippines who worked for us when my daughters were just 16 months apart. It was crazy at our household. Our son was older. And she would come every day and cook these amazing dishes from her homeland. And we loved her and the food. And she brought this fruit one day, and she cut it up on a plate, handed it to me. And I bit in. It was this juicy orange fruit. And I said, Melda, what is this fruit? And she goes, it's a mango. And I go, a mango? How come I've never had a mango before? I considered myself to be very worldly. I traveled many times. And I'm like, how did I miss the mangoes? These are so great. And I go, where did you get these? Thinking she must have imported them. And she goes, at the grocery store. And I thought, how did I miss the mangoes? Because I'm a girl who grew up in Idaho, where there are lots of potatoes, but no mangoes. And so I thought, it made me think about it really deeply. I thought, what else am I missing in life? Because I'm just naive. I have no idea it exists. What person am I passing by every day, or somewhere in my energy orbit that could be my greatest advocate, my next best friend, someone I could help, or a business colleague or partner? What else am I missing? What opportunities, what experiences? Because I'm just really naive that they even exist for me. And it made me think, I need to open up to that living in that wonder, living in the question, looking around me, my world more, and saying, what is this? Who is this? I wonder what they do. It's that asking journey. And so part of what we miss out in life is that very thing. It just comes from our own naivete. And it's definitely a roadblock in our life, in our progression. And then the final, the last two are pattern paralysis. And that is just, doing those things over and over again in our lives when we really know at some level they're not working, but we never stop to ask why, or even ask if it is working, acknowledge what's not working.
We all do that way more often than we like to admit. Stop pointing at it, Crystal. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
That's why we don't ask. So we need to get over that. And then the final one is disconnection. And I think for me, that's really the saddest one of all. And that's really about disconnecting from the dreams in your heart. So almost giving up on yourself and getting to that apathetic state where, you know, you're just kind of hopeless. And we see a lot of people there right now, Amrit, and I'm sure you do in your coaching practice as well. And so we just are encouraging everybody to get this book, read every word, take this journey, challenge yourself to take this asking journey with us, because it will wake you up. You will start to come alive again. You will start to recognize yourself in these stories and in these lessons. And it's very transformational.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Crystal. And Mark and Crystal, what's coming through for me at the moment is just, maybe it was by design. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you can speak to this. But yeah, at this time, just having surfaced or surfacing or just still kind of, I'm not sure exactly where we are in the COVID wave, but we're all on our boards, that's for sure, in isolation. And one of the things that's been remarkable for me, touch wood, is, being, as I said, the world sees me as the purpose coach. So many people are questioning everything right now, everything related to this purpose destiny conversation. It's like, like either they've been forced to take leave, or they've been forced out of spaces, or they're choosing to take time off to reevaluate where they are. And I feel like people really are taking the time to get still and to question. So I really find it quite poetic in its timing, or potentially intentional at your end in its timing, of writing a book that is asking us to, when people are naturally asking at this time, bigger questions about life in general and where they are and their place in it. And also not just their place in it, but also collectively the way we operate as a society. Like, I think at certain points, if I told you that we would ground all airplanes across the planet, you'd be like, yeah, in your wildest dreams, mate. And all of a sudden, it's like, no, all air travel is grounded. It's like we can actually, and then like dolphins are swimming in the rivers in cities again. And it's just, so much is availing itself at this time. And I think people are asking questions about how the economy works, about, how we trade, about all preconceived notions of how we go to work, and people are working from home. So I think we're asking so many questions of ourselves and of society, and potentially even of God right now, that I think, it's just a really timely juncture to receive such a blessing in the way of this book. Thank you so much.
Well, we want everyone to get a copy of it, because most people, back to what you've said, is all profound and correct and articulate and a great summation and summary of what we've said. But most people don't know how to ask. So what we say is, look, this book that we put together based on she got 121 letters a couple of days ago, is transformational, because people get it and then they go over it with their spouse, or they go over it with their church mate or their business partner or their mastermind partner. And what happens is they're unveiling the truth of who there is. What's the truth of your soul? What is it that you want to know about God in you? That's the point.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for sharing yourself so abundantly here in this space today. It has been such a pleasure. It's been a joy. And like, I know that I get to revel in your presence and have this amazing conversation here today. And I do want to thank you for your time and energy, but I'm also hyper aware that, it's a lifetime's work that informs the conversation we're having as well. So I just want to thank you so much for being on the path that you are, to inspire our journeys forward as well. And as always, from myself and the Inspired Evolution tribe and community, we're wishing you all the best going forward.